check this. This is the hard knock life, but not the chica kind. More like the people in the world seeking perspectives with a different line. The kids who share the interest together with a similar kind. When they said Don Glover for Spider-Man.
Welcome back to Hard Knock Life. This is Keith Chow, your host. I am joined by two wonderful guests tonight to talk about a little indie movie that just hit the theaters. It's called Rouge One. You may have heard of it. It's the latest chapter of, it's not actually a chapter movie, but it's the latest installment of the Star Wars franchise that's dominating the box office right now. And I have some really cool people on to talk about it. So first up, let me introduce, she is a contributor to the Nerds of Color. She is also the movie reviewer for Black Girl Nerds. Please welcome back to Hard Knock Life, Valerie Complex. What's up, Valerie?
Hello. Still soft-spoken and still outspoken about Star Wars movies. So.
Well, everything, right? You are
pretty much everything.
You are our movie expert on the Nerds of Color, and then you've been writing reviews for Black Girl Nerds recently. How's that been going?
It's been great. Black Girl Nerds just got registered on Rotten Tomatoes, so you can see my work on there if you, and it'll lead you to the website. So it's been pretty fun. I like being able to give my opinion and say what I want to say.
Yeah, but you're technically a movie critic now, Valerie. Welcome to the club, right?
Movie.
Also joining us this evening on the Nerds of Color is a special guest. She is a writer for ToshiStation.net. She's also part of the blog White Hot Room. I think I got that right. Please welcome writer, cosplayer, fashionista extraordinaire, Bria LaVorgna. Welcome to Hard Knock Life.
Thank you for having me. This is fun. I am also outspoken and also loud spoken. So
you're also probably one of the biggest Star Wars nerds we've ever had on Hard Knock Life. So yeah, if anyone can see, there are Star Wars snowflakes behind me. So still one of them a nerd. Yeah, we are definitely going to dive really deep into the galaxy far, far away. I'm ready. I got my hoodie on. I even have my Bodhi Rook Force for Change t-shirt. I got K2SO over here. We are ready to dive into Rouge One. So before we get started, why don't we just kind of go around the table a little bit and share like some quick thoughts about the movie. We were talking before we started recording that it's kind of divisive among fans, ironically. Like there are fans who either really, really love it or fans who really hate it. And it's kind of, I was actually surprised about how much fans are split. So Valerie, why don't we start with you? What was your overall opinion of the film?
If I would give it like a rating on a scale of like 1 to 10, I'd give it like a 7.5.
Okay.
Initially, it was an 8. I had to think about things, and I was like, oh, okay, got to bring it down a little bit. Overall, I think it's like the most action-packed Star Wars movie. Like, it was just action from the beginning to the end. I was impressed with that, and I really liked it. I liked most of the characters, especially K2SO, who was just sort of hilarious. And, Alan Tudyk, he does really great voice work.
Yeah.
So I expected good things from him. That's pretty much how I feel about it. It didn't like blow me away. It's definitely the most beautiful looking Star Wars film as well. It was like super gorgeous with the hyper space stuff that was happening. Like it was like it didn't look like PS2 graphics like, the first set of movies or the prequels really. But it was overall 7.5.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's a pretty good score. Before we start recording, Bria, you had the movie a little bit higher on your scale. What were your initial thoughts of Rouge One?
I would say the first time I saw it, I rather liked it. And then I've seen it 3 times now, and the more I see it, the more I like it. Mostly because every time I watch the Battle of Scarif, I see something new, and I just nerd out hardcore over it.
Yeah.
Definitely had some problems with it, mostly related to the lack of women. But I mean, I really enjoyed it. I did not expect to love a lot of the characters as much as I did. Or to hate some of the characters, Orson Krennic. But I mean, that's partially due to some of the books. But yeah, I mean, I really liked it. I thought it was a really great genre film for Star Wars. And I'm really now even more excited to see what else they do with the Star Wars stories.
Yeah. So just a bit of background for folks that, you know, Rogue One is the first, I kind of alluded to it earlier. Rogue One is the first movie outside of the saga films that they're calling them, the episodes 1 through 9. It's directed by Gareth Edwards, who directed Godzilla 2 years ago. He did the indie film Monsters. Kind of alluding to what Valerie was saying about the way it was shot. He's probably, you know, one of the best kind of pure auteurs to do a Star Wars movie. You know, I love J.J. Abrams, but he's not exactly like, you know, his cinematic language is like, you know, lens flares, and it's not the cinematography of someone like a Gareth Edwards, because there are beautiful vistas that you'd never seen in a Star Wars film in this movie. So, and also just a quick alert to folks who have not seen Rogue One. And if you're listening or watching this podcast and you haven't seen the movie, what's wrong with you? Just be forewarned, we're going to spoil the shit out of this. So if you're trying to go into Rogue One without knowing anything about the plot or the characters, you should probably stop listening right now.
Should we warn them that they steal the Death Star plans?
Yeah, the Rogue 2 is actually called A New Hope. So if you're waiting for a sequel, it's already out. So yeah, so let's kind of like start at the beginning with just the notion of getting someone like Gareth Edwards. Valerie, since you mentioned, you know, the cinematography of the movie, were you familiar with Edwards' work beforehand, and what were you expecting, like, when you walked into Rogue One, knowing like his past work with Monsters and Godzilla?
Well, I thought Godzilla was trash, so I didn't know what to expect. I was kind of like, the guy that directed Godzilla, like, oh God. Ugh. And I've heard of Monsters, but I haven't had a chance to really see it. So I was, you know, I wasn't sure what to expect. But as far as directing, he came through, you know, he exceeded expectations in that department.
Yeah.
Which I think is good. And Star Wars is a good thing to have on your resume. Everybody wants to have a Star Wars on their resume. So I think, you know, he did a good job.
I mean, say what you will about the Godzilla film. I actually liked it more than a lot of people did when it came out in 2014. It wasn't the best movie ever, but there were, you know, kind of going along with Valerie was saying about like the visuals in Rogue One, there were definitely some, you know, like haunting visuals from Godzilla. In particular, there's a scene when like the airmen are falling out of the plane and they have this trails of smoke behind them as they're kind of falling onto the monster. It's just a beautiful image. I think they use it in some of the posters. So there's a lot of that kind of just, you know, cinematography that Rogue One kind of exploits. Bria, can you talk a little bit about like how Rogue One fits since you are a resident Star Wars expert, how it fits into the chronology of the saga films that people have seen thus far?
Sure. So the short version is it takes place immediately before Episode 4, New Hope. The long version is that it starts about, he's about 8 years old. So about like 5 or 6, about 5 years before, or rather after Revenge of the Sith. You can date that because we know when Jin was born. Mm-hmm. But so, you know, we see that little flashback in the middle, and then sort of takes you all the way up to how they steal the Death Star plans. And contrary to all these smart-ass comments on the internet you may have seen about Bothans, that is the wrong Death Star. Bothan stole the plans or helped, you know, discover information about the second Death Star, not the first one. But yeah, so I mean, it really legitimately leads right up to the start of A New Hope with that final beautiful, beautiful shot for the Tantive 4 that I think I almost cried when I saw that shot.
There's actually some guy on Vimeo. I just saw it today, actually. Someone took some bootleg footage from the end of Rogue One and seamlessly edited it into the beginning of A New Hope. It's like a 9-minute video. If Lucasfilm hasn't taken it down yet, it's on Vimeo right now where it's kind of like, you know, it's something that I've been, as soon as I saw it in the theater, I was like, oh, I can't wait till this comes out on Blu-ray and I do the watch them back to back.
Just go all the way through.
Because it's basically the video on Vimeo is like a 9-minute segment that starts at the beginning of, you know, a certain person's raid onto a rebel ship, and it ends with you know, C-3PO and R2-D2 escaping out of the pod. So Bria is not joking when she says Rogue One takes place immediately before A New Hope, because it literally takes you all the way up into that point where we see the Star Destroyer open, that movie from 1977. There's one of the things that I know at the Nerds of Color that we have been stoked about ever since Rogue One was announced was particularly when the cast was announced. This is the first Star Wars movie in which there are more people of color than white folks, like as main characters. Cassian Andor, played by Diego Luna, so there are Mexicans in space. Riz Ahmed plays Bodhi Rook. That's this guy right here. Donnie Yen plays Chirrut Imwe, and Jiang Wen plays Baze Malbus. So there are finally Asians in space that aren't Nemoidians. Woohoo! Forrest Whitaker plays Saul Guerrero, who was actually a character from the Clone Wars, right? And I think
season 5, he was in the Onderon arc, and he's going to be on Rebels very soon.
Right. So they're bringing. I think this is the first time like a outside of canon character has been portrayed live action in a movie. I could be wrong. Bria will probably correct me if I
am. Yeah. Short version is he's the first one to make it from the Clone Wars in.
Okay, cool. And apparently, and I need to see this. I haven't seen Rogue One a second time, but there are apparently some references to Rebels.
Can I go over them? Because I got really freaking excited.
Yeah. Well, we'll wait a second. We'll hold on that one. And then, so you notice that I didn't name any women of color, and I think one of the issues that a lot of people have had is, as diverse as this Star Wars is, it's still like people of color and a white woman. Valerie, I know that was one of your critiques of the film, is that there are nary any women of color, and not just in Rogue One, in the Star Wars cinematic universe, like altogether. You're hard pressed to think of a woman of color in a major role. I mean, up until this point, there were hardly any people of color in Star Wars, so there's still some miles to go before we see some women of color. So how did that affect your take on Rogue One? As diverse as it was, it still lacked other aspects.
Man, I was disappointed, because really Rogue One is just one of those stories where it could have been anybody. Jyn Erso could have been a black woman, or she could have been a Latina or an Asian woman. It could have been anybody. Mm-hmm. But they chose, I guess maybe, Felicity Jones is like the flavor of the month or whatever. So they chose her to sort of lead this pack. And then it's this pack of men, which they also could have included other women of color or other women. And they just didn't do that. It's this one woman leading all of these men, which has led to a lot of the dumb conversations about, the men were weak and whatever to this woman. And it was just so stupid. But I think it's almost like, their casting taste, they have a type, and I call their type Attack of the Clones, because they all look alike. And I understand, there's a little bit of lineage there with Natalie Portman being the mother of Princess Leia. But then you got Jyn Erso, you got Rey, and you have freaking this chick,
Daenerys.
What's her name?
Daenerys Targaryen.
Amelia Clark as a lead in the Han Solo movie. I'm like, oh my God, I slapped my head soft. You gotta be kidding me.
Yeah.
Really? Well, and they're all brunette with like brown or green eyes. And I'm like, okay.
They're all British.
Yeah, and they're all British. I'm like, yeah, she may not be like super Aryan looking, but shit, let's give it a rest. Like, time to retire.
Well, I mean, she does in Game of Thrones, to be honest. But we'll take a little tangent from Rogue One and hop into the Han Solo movie real quick, because on this point, I think Emily Clark's casting was particularly disappointing, because if anyone reads the Han Solo comic that Marjorie Liu wrote, his love interest was a black woman, and
that's a Star Wars comic.
Oh, was that the Star Wars comic? Oh.
Yeah.
That's why you're here, Bria. Thank you.
Senate Staros, Jason Aaron introduced her.
So, but that character was black. No one's saying that Emily's playing her in the movie, but before they announced her casting, there were rumors of, I believe, Zoe Kravitz, Tessa Thompson, Naomi Scott, all women of color, were up for this role, and it ultimately went to Amelia Clark. And I think that there was definitely some disappointment there, because we thought finally there's going to be a chance for a lead woman of color, and that was another missed opportunity.
She better not be playing his love interest.
I don't think she is. I don't think she's playing Sarah.
It can't be, because there's definitely now, there's no longer an expanded universe. The outside books and novels and graphic novels are direct ties into canon, right? So like, they couldn't whitewash that character.
The story group would not let that happen. Someone there would go,
Bria, I know that your beef with Star Wars is that it's lack of women in general, but as to Valerie's point, a lot of these women characters could also be women of color, right?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of have a running joke, but that's not actually accurate because I'm deadly serious about it. I keep saying that to prove a point, my plan is to costume as all the Asian women in Star Wars that have named significant parts. And I think so far I can fit them all in one hand. Like from the comics, from the books, from the films. So, I mean, we got a new one. We got a new pilot.
Right.
Thanks to Rouge One, who's there for 2 seconds. But yay, Gabby Wong. I would say that the books and the comics are doing a little bit better as far as the representation front, both for women and people of color. But I know when they announced the Rouge One cast, I went through a lot of, I don't know whether to be excited or disappointed, because on the one hand, there were 2 Asian guys.
Three Asian guys. Riz,
excuse me.
Two East Asian, right.
Asian. Yeah. Because I was really rolled around on the floor when I saw that casting thing come out from San Diego. But at the same time, there's also the disappointment about it. Number one, just being one woman. And number 2, being a white woman. And I think for me, the most egregious thing in Rouge One was when they landed on Scarif and the entire landing party is male. Like,
all dudes.
Congratulations on finding people of color, but also let's find some women and some women of color. So that irritated me. And then as far as the Empire, I found it interesting that the only Imperial we saw who was a person of color was Odie. Like, if you think about it, it's a little weird that every single person we see in the Empire is a white guy, when in the books and the comics, they make it a point to talk about how there are female stormtroopers, there are people of color in the Empire in high-ranking positions of power. And then you get to the film and you're like,
it's all British. It's all British dudes again.
White men as far as the eye can see. But yeah, I mean, I would say that my problem with it is just women can fire a gun just as well as anyone else. Put at least 2 in the landing party. That would have been that hard.
It blows me because it's like the whole Star Wars lore comes from, sort of the Akira Kurosawa's Hidden Fortress, and the inspiration for Princess Leia is Princess Yuki, who, first of all, I think Hidden Fortress has women that are a lot stronger and sort of there's more solidarity there. But when you have Princess Yuki, who isn't necessarily the damsel that I think Princess Leia is, and it's just the Jedi comes from this idea of the way of the warrior and samurai and stuff like that. And then they have the nerve to leave. They take the culture, hijack the culture, and then leave all the people out of it. Like, how do you do that? And then I read that Jess Pava, I think, is the extended universe character. I think she was in Rogue. I mean, not Rogue. I think
she was in The Force Awakens.
Yeah,
The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
And I hear rumors that her part's supposed to be bigger, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I really. I mean, I wouldn't trust it. Whatever. But I'm just curious. I'm like, where are they? Like, at least some Asian folks, because that's where the whole culture is taken from. It really blows my mind.
Well, I think on that front, we can put some hope, there's that word again, in episode 8, because by all accounts, Kelly Marie Tran is a lead character in that film. And, John Boyega even said when she was cast on Instagram that they have so many scenes together. So I'm not exactly sure who she's going to play and what that means for the movie, but, and hopefully she's not playing an alien, because there's also the kind of running gag of whenever you do cast women of color, or people of color in general in these movies, they're usually hidden behind, layers of makeup or CGI, like Lupita Nyong'o in Force Awakens, and it's still not representation because or even Gwendolyn Christie for that matter, like being in a stormtrooper helmet for that whole movie. That they're still like, you can cast people of color, women of color in a movie, but then you hide them behind makeup. I'm surprised Zoe Saldana isn't in Star Wars, because she's always painted a different color in these movies. So Bria, going back to just Rogue One, one of the things about the film, and this is where we're going to get into spoiler territory, probably explains why there are no people of color in the original trilogy, because that whole landing party that you mentioned, they're all dead.
Everyone's dead. Somewhere, Mon Mothma is sitting at a table singing empty chairs and empty tables. But yeah.
Yeah, POC, all the POC characters are in this film, and we're all excited about it, but they all also bite the bite the blaster beam, as it were, throughout the film. And all the way down from Saul Guerrero, all the way down to Cassie and Jyn, and even K2SO, for God's sakes. Like, who would have think that, like, you could be so upset over the death of a droid? But wow, that's pretty upsetting.
That was the one that hit me the hardest. I was not expecting it to, and then he was just like, climb. I was just, no.
It's like, if you thought the Baymax scene in Big Hero 6 was sad, wait till you see K2SO sacrifice himself for the Death Star plans. So Rogue One, it's a dark film. I mean, it really is like the warsiest war movie in all of Star Wars, because one of the things that I felt the POC representation kind of added to the Star Wars lore was seeing the rebellion as people of color, in particular the scene on Jeddah, where there is an ambush on this like patrolling Imperial soldiers coming through this like market. And you realize that, whoa, wait a minute, the rebels, there's always that running joke that like the rebels are terrorists, but in the Empire's eyes, they're terrorists, and it makes you kind of it recalibrates what the rebellion is, I think, for people, because that scene looks like something out of Zero Dark 30 or whatever. It's like these Jedi, these rebels planting IEDs on these Imperial tanks, right? And Jeddah being this holy city. Like, there was a lot of parallels to like the way we look at the Middle East now. And I think the fact that you see people of color like with their heads wrapped and they're the good guys, I think totally recalibrates what we think in our modern day sensibilities of that whole good versus evil. And there's so many like levels of gray in this film that really, I think, resonates in today's time more so than ever.
I was just like, wow, people are getting murked. Like, one after the other, like people are being blown up. And you mentioned Zero Dark 30, and I remember one scene in particular that was like, everybody was standing around and they were, a car pulled up, and, they said whatever, and it just blew the hell up. And that's what was happening in Star Wars. Everything was just, it seemed really guerrilla style, not like stylized like, the prequels or, episode 1 or any of the original films, are really stylized battle scenes with hovercrafts and lasers or whatever. This one is like, laser beams and bombs and pipe bombs. And it was really like, it felt, this made, I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, it's called Star Wars for a reason. But it felt like, it actually felt like a revolution. As opposed to, everybody, looks good and the makeup is in place and the hair is in place and the woods, and, it just seemed really, it was really a raw piece of filmmaking.
I mean, it's really like Star Wars is like anti-colonial, like literature, you know what I mean? Like, I felt like that scene in particular, just kind of, again, recontextualizing what the rebellion was, really as a call against like colonialism and empire. And it makes you think, God, especially in the post-Trump kind of world, it's like, we really are the empire. You know what I mean? Like, that is, if you were to kind of like graft just geopolitics of today onto Star Wars, it's like, they've never, I could see people teaching Rogue One in college, is what I'm saying.
Star Wars has always been political.
Right.
I mean, you look at the prequels, that's essentially George Lucas's middle finger to George Bush. I mean, it was political all the way back. Yeah, I mean, it was political all the way back to the original. I mean, I'm sure I've been one of the people making the war is in the title of Star Wars jokes, simply because of a poorly phrased headline. but I like that they really went there with the war film aspect, and I thought it was interesting, sort of just a little extra universe Star Wars thing. So the tactics that Saul was using, he learned from the Jedi, including Anakin Skywalker and his Padawan. So the irony of that, when I was watching it like the first or second time, I was like, maybe you shouldn't have taught them that, Vader.
Yeah, well, again, that can be grafted onto like current geopolitics when you think of, Al Qaeda came out of America training the Mujahideen in Afghanistan. Like there's all and there's all of these parallels that I think when the movie came out, Bob Iger said, "Oh no, this is not a political movie," in kind of response to all of like the Trumpists and people on Twitter, boycotting, Star Wars. But I think there, when in my screening, I was like looking around during the whole Jeddah scene at like the white folk in the theater, going like, I wonder how they're interpreting this scene. You know what I mean? Because I feel like, I was like, see if there was anyone wearing a red hat in my theater, because I think it really is a critique against empire, like, and the United States as an empire. Well, I think that was my favorite aspect of the film, or my favorite part of the film, is that was also the introduction to Chirrut Imwe and Baze Malbus, who were clearly my favorite characters. Donnie Yen and Jiang Wen playing essentially, like, if you thought there was sexual tension between Poe and Finn in The Force Awakens, I mean, this was basically Star Wars' first gay couple, hopefully, right? Like, someone's going to write that comic book if that hasn't already been written.
Well,
because
if they get confirmed, they won't be the first.
Well, in live action, I'm saying, because
yes,
again, my Star Wars library is very limited to the films and to the toys. But what was your take on Donnie Yen and Jiang Wen's characters in Rogue One?
I did not expect Chirrut to have the funniest line in the entire film. Like, in a film with all those K2 lines, I was not expecting, "Are you kidding me? I'm blind." It just made me laugh as hard as it did. But I really liked both of them, because like, you could see whether you think they were together or not, like, but the bond between them and the friendship was, I mean, it was almost tangible. And I thought, my heart broke when Chirrut died, and you saw when Baze was about to get blown up too, because everyone in this film got blown to a million pieces. And you see him just kind of look over at Chirrut, and I'm like, oh no. I mean, they were basically everything I wanted in the film, and I'm really, really excited that we're going to be getting a book about them in the spring.
Oh, nice. We are?
Yeah, I believe it's a middle grade book by Greg Rucka.
Oh.
Yeah, he's the one who he wrote the Shattered Empire comic. He wrote the Han Solo middle grade book, and he wrote Before the Awakening,
which is the Rey, Finn, and Poe anthology.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to see more of them. And I think the problem was not just Chirrut and Baze, but like, I love the characters so much that it's such a shame that they went boom. Because we can't get any sequels about them.
Yeah.
The opportunity to get a prequel about those two.
Well, I mean, the thing about Rogue One and the whole non-saga films is that they can be set at any time in the universe. So if they do make a big enough impression, that we could get a fuller movie. And we were kind of facetiously saying that they were a gay couple, but even if they aren't gay, I think their depiction of masculinity, I think, is something that's sorely needed in just our current culture now, because I think there are, to see two men care about each other that much, I think, is an important depiction, especially in science fiction and fantasy. The other thing that people, when Donnie Yen was cast, I recall some groans among people saying, "Oh, of course the Asian guy is the martial artist," but come on, it's Donnie Yen. You can't cast Donnie Yen and not give him a stick to beat stormtroopers up with. Val, what was your impression of, because you had mentioned earlier how Star Wars borrows from Asian culture so much. What was it like to finally see some Asian characters on the screen?
It felt right. Like, even though there were parts about Chirrut Imwe that I didn't care for, but those were all writing problems. That has nothing to do with Donnie Yen. Donnie Yen is fucking great. He's like so charismatic. He's so smooth. He's good looking, and he can act. And it was just like, me and my friend was sitting in the theater, like, whispering to each other, like, what if that was Chow Yun-fat? Would it have been as good? And we were like, nah, probably not. And there's nothing wrong with, Italian fat or whatever, but it's just Donnie Yen brings something extra to the table. But there's that whole magical Asian aspect that I was kind of like, eh. But that's just me being picky, whatever. But overall, I really loved the two of them. It was kind of like buddy cop-ish.
Yeah.
I didn't take it as like, oh, they're two gay people. I feel like every time, two men aren't dapping people up and like, smashing chests together that they got to be couples. No, they're just, it's a time of war. You there's people around that you care about, and you're going to stick closest to the ones that you care about the most. That's all it was. How they depicted that relationship.
Yeah. Right. And that goes along with what I was saying about, I think, exactly what you said, like, we need levels of what masculinity means. And I think, Chirrut and Baze kind of demonstrate that. And the only thing I'll say about that, the worries about Donnie's kind of, magical Asian martial artist kind of stereotype is, what I think, why I think that's fine is that if he was the only Asian character in the film, it would maybe be a problem, because you have Baze, who's like, he doesn't believe in those hokey religions, and he carries a giant ass cannon with him. And then you have Bodhi, who's got a completely different storyline. This is what I think, Asian Americans call for in representation, right? And I've written about how I don't mind martial artists as long as they are depicted as human beings, as long as they're multidimensional, or that you have different kinds of people represented. And I think what's special about Rogue One in that aspect is that you have Bodhi Rook and you have Baze Malbus, alongside someone like Chirrut Imwe, so that when he unleashes some kung fu, that's not the only representation of Asians in the film. You have, and I kind of joked when I said Chirrut and Baze were my favorites, because honestly, my favorite character in the film was probably Bodhi, because, similar to like Finn in Force Awakens, it's a real kind of like human character in the Star Wars universe, where you have someone who has a crisis of conscience, a former Imperial that defects and decides that, our way is not the right way, and tries to join the rebellion. Bria, what was your impression of Riz Ahmed, who, if anyone's read my year-end recap on the Nerds of Color, had the second best 2016 in all of like nerd of color pop culture? That was Riz Ahmed. Bria, what was your take on Bodhi Rook?
I want to detour really, really quick back to Chirrut for like 1 second.
Sure.
Because I think it says everything that Donnie Yen's son has now costumed as his dad's character twice, including for the premiere like today. And it is the most precious thing I've seen. And I mean, like you were saying, Chirrut didn't have to be the one thing for every single Asian person in the film. We had multiple people, and just seeing little kids' costume makes me so happy. But back to Bodhi. Bodhi Rook was precious, and I just wanted to pick him up off of Scarif and like protect him from the world. Which sounds like really, really weird when I phrase it like that out loud. But I just wanted to hug him. Like, that precious boy was trying to do the right thing. Like, I'm sure when he joined the Empire, it wasn't for like patriotism. It was probably, he needed something to do, or that's like what it was. It was kind of more like what was expected.
Right.
And that he sort of became friends with Galen. I mean, his last words were like, "This is for you, Galen," or something along those lines. Yeah. And he did something. Like, he made a difference. Without him, like, say what you will about Jin, but everything would had to happen because of Bodhi.
Right.
Also, I love Riz Ahmed because he's sitting there he's like defending the prequels, and I am always 100% here for someone to also praise the prequels.
There you go. I mean, what can you say, right? Because I think, Riz Ahmed, first of all, great actor, great rapper, just overall awesome. He's the kind of guy that I just want to hang out with him. You know what I mean? Like,
he's a rapper?
He's a rapper. He's one half of the Sweatshop Boys.
And he's on the Hamilton mixtape.
I think that's right. So, yeah, when I saw
Sweatshop Boys, I'm sorry, I'm so like lost.
No, so the Sweatshop Boys are two South Asian rappers, Riz MC, which is Riz Ahmed, and Heems, who was part of Das Racist many years ago. And now he's from Queens, and they tour together as the Sweatshop Boys, and they just put out an album this year. They went on tour this year. Like, Riz was doing a Sweatshop Boys tour the same time he was doing like press for Rogue One. It was like, dude, you are nonstop. You are Alexander Hamilton, Riz Ahmed. And he has the best track on the Hamilton mixtape. Immigrants is by far
get the job done.
The best song on the Hamilton mixtape. So yeah, Riz had the #2 best year. Lin-Manuel Miranda had the #1 best year. So just make sure you go read that on the Nerds of Color. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. But going into Rogue One, I didn't realize how pivotal Bodhi was going to be, because all of the press materials about his character didn't give away the fact that, like you said, the whole rebellion hinged on him. And it's awesome that it was a brown person that was important. Not important enough to live, but important.
None of them were important enough to live.
Important nonetheless. So yeah, let's before we wrap, I don't want to forget about my man Diego Luna as Cassian Andor. Again, perfect characterization, great acting, like the layers of his character, his jaded cynicism kind of blossoming into hope at the end was great. Todd McCarthy from The Hollywood Reporter, I think, kind of dissed Diego Luna, saying that he was too weak a leading man for Felicity Jones, which I thought, I don't know if, did you guys see The Hollywood Reporter?
The Hollywood Reporter just seems to have a vendetta against Star Wars right now. Like, honestly, everything they've said, I've been like, did you watch the same film? Were you high when you saw this?
Yeah, Todd, and I think Tom McCarthy has a history of just kind of like his white male privilege kind of getting in the way of the way he reviews movies. I mean, Val, you're a movie critic. I'm sure you've read some of your colleagues who are white and male kind of dismissing.
Not my colleagues. You are like my colleague. They are not. I don't know what they are. People who do the same thing that I do.
Yeah, Diego Luna, his first scene is like he murks like an informant, and you're like, whoa, this is. There's no Han shot first here. Like, we know exactly what's going on.
He had the best character arc in the film. Yeah. I really think so. Because he went from, the do what you got to do, the terrible things for the rebellion, which I think is actually incredibly interesting and for the broader Star Wars universe, because I want to know more about rebellion intelligence and everything that like General Draven has his people do. But then you get to the point where he was like, we've all done these terrible things. Let's go. Yeah. And I just thought I don't think he's becoming more and more one of my favorites, but it's hard to say who was my favorite in the film at this point, just because I love all of them more and more each time I see it.
And I remember you tweeting about this when they confirmed his character, because there was a rumor when he was cast that what's the name of the character that people thought
he was going to be Biggs Darklighter?
No, it was that he was going to be Poe's father or something, right?
Oh yeah.
What's his name? Kaz Dameron or
Dameron. I remember his mother met her.
Yeah, but it's like all the Latinos in space have to be related.
Yeah, well, it's the same thing, like all this crap about like all the, Finn had to be Lando's kid or something. I'm like, come on, guys. Yeah. Like, I know they're not that many, but they're not all related.
Yeah, it's a big galaxy.
Or like Finn was related to Mace Windu. That guy's dying.
Well, it's like all the black people got to be related, and apparently Chirrut and Baze are related to the Nemoidians. So,
oh my god.
So before we wrap up, I want to.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to cut you off. I just don't understand people's need to rationalize these things when people of color are part of these franchises. Why must we rationalize that they come from somewhere other than an organic place that the writers chose to have them come from, as opposed to like, oh, okay, either Mace Windu or Lando Calrissian. Oh, Rey is related to freaking she's Princess Leia. Or Jen Erso's her mother. Like, it irritates me that people have to always rationalize these connections. Sometimes they're just not fucking connected. Let it go.
Right, but
it must be nice to be a white male character who, exactly. They don't have to get rationalized.
Because they're the default. They're the normal.
Of course.
Yeah. So I wanted to wrap up because we could, and I know Bria would agree with this, could talk about Star Wars like ad infinitum, but we got to get control on this. So we'll end with each of you. Maybe just what was the one kind of moment in the movie that like stayed with you So I'll let Val go first because Bria looks like she's got some thinking to do. But was there like one particular moment or one scene that you were like, when you walked out the theater, you were like, that was something that I'm going to remember, a cinematic experience?
Well, of course, when Chirrut and Wade came on the scene and started fighting and like breaking like helmets, which I thought was, you know, really cool. It was just a different type of fight scene, one that you just don't see in the Star Wars universe. Something more natural, something real. That was a lightsaber. But really, the end scene with Cassian and Jyn holding each other as it just reminded me of Deep Impact. And I was like, damn, this is really the end of this whole crew. Now we have to like move on. It's like, oh, I'm gonna miss everybody. Like being at summer camp, where it was like, you know, everybody, we went on this journey. We went through, you know, 6 weeks of summer, and now it's over.
And now everyone dies in a nuclear explosion.
Right, here comes the mushroom cloud, and everybody's dust.
What kind of summer camps did you go to, Val?
No, it was just, you know, it just reminded me of like that closeness, that bond that everybody sort of had, and now it's over. And I guess they had to die because, you know, right at the beginning of Star Wars: A New Hope, when Princess Leia is like, you know, the rebellion was squashed, and you know, nobody made it. Yeah. So they just had this sort of said, even though I was like, oh, I wish they, you know, could have stayed around for a little bit longer. So that scene where they're hugging and it's like, man, that's intense. Like, it's sad, but you know, it had to happen. So.
Yeah. No, when you see the Mushroom Clan, the white light, you're like, this is not a typical Star Wars movie. Bria, I gave you some time. What?
I mean, that was a beautiful, beautiful image. Like that, everything with Vader at the very, very end. Like, I don't think that any theater I was in was silent. Like everyone was like, a couple swears going on. I mean, I just loved so much of it. I mean, I don't know if I should go with Vader's incredibly dramatic, which is not an insult for me, because Anakin Skywalker is the most melodramatic idiot on the face of the planet. His "be careful not to choke on your ambitions" director, like, I died when that happened. I don't know whether to go with that or to go with, I mean, again, that beautiful image you just mentioned, the entire Battle of Scarif, which was gorgeously shot, and I lost my shit when I heard this is Red Leader and this is Gold Leader, because that was literally them. I lost it. Or just that beautiful ending shot. I know a lot of people were creeped out by the CGI, but I didn't even notice it with Leia. And they're like, what is it, Senator? And she just turns and says, hope.
Yeah.
And I just melted. Or every single part with Bail Organa. And I felt so bad for my friend I saw this with, because he must have bruises on his arm.
He's just
from when I just beat him like every single time. And I'm like, don't go back to Alderaan. You're going to die. Did you notice I didn't pick one?
Yeah, I know. I noticed that. That's okay.
I'm not sorry.
You could just the whole film, right?
Most of it, yeah. Sorry.
And we didn't even. I'm glad you brought up the CGI Leia, because we didn't even talk about Peter Cushing was resurrected from the dead and had more screen time in this than in New Hope. Like, I think if you time the minutes of how long he's on screen in Rogue One, I think he's actually on screen more in this movie than in A New Hope.
It was crazy. It freaked me out at first, but then I got more used to it.
Yeah. I mean, because I remember at the end of Revenge of the Sith, there was like, you saw Tarkin turn around and that was it. You were always like, oh, whoa, that was cool. But then now he's going to talk and he's going to interact with that was weird. But cool. It was really cool. I saw a lot of people kind of complaining about like the uncanny valleyness of it all, but it worked for me. I thought, I mean, at first you're kind of like, whoa, that's, just like Robert Downey Jr. and Iron Man, or, you're kind of like, whoa, that's weird. But then it's like, it's kind of cool, but it is kind of creepy, because it's like, oh, they can really make movies with anybody now. It makes you think that like, if they do show Obi-Wan, instead of getting Ewan McGregor, it's like, that could have been Alec Guinness. They could get him back. But
it looked a lot better than Tron Legacy. Oh God.
Oh yeah, Tron Legacy.
Oh my God.
That was the beta test. With Jeff Bridges. God. My favorite moment in the movie, I think, is maybe a surprise to everyone, but it's a really small thing, and it's towards the beginning when Jyn is in the like prisoner transport right before the rebels save her, and you see the stormtrooper kind of like just sitting, like with his head down. And I was like, I don't know what it is about that. That scene was so affecting for me, because it's like, these are just like regular people. Got caught up, like for 40 years you've been trained to think of them as stormtroopers, as these kind of inept guys get their heads on doors. But like this was his like armor was dirty, and he just had his like arms resting on his legs. I don't know, it was just something about seeing a stormtrooper kind of as a real person that like I again just added a whole nother layer to like Star Wars as a mythology and as a story and as a saga. That I think the best thing you can say about Rogue One is that it makes the fantasy of Star Wars real. And from the dirt on the costumes to like the stormtrooper with his head down, that's, I think, it's the biggest testament that film has on the greater mythology. So
I'd like for Star Wars to start exploring a little bit more real aspects, like the effects of war. People with PTSD and people who are scared, people who are hiding out, people are dying. They're dying of starvation. They're dying of desperation. Things like that. I'd like to see. I know, it's time for Star Wars to be a little more like The Empire Strikes Back and give us some of that grit and some of that dirt that I know they could give us. I mean, I'm not saying I want to see an indie version of Star Wars where the budget is like $50,000. I'm saying like I want to see, I want to see them tap into a little bit more of that realness, especially with the expanded universe and how they, and even from the books that you read, you can sort of feel that realness that the books have. I want to see that on screen.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited for episode 8 and Rian Johnson, because his movies are really good, but they're scientific, but they're sort of down to earth and they're real.
Well, and again, episode 8 is the middle part, and like in any kind of 3-act structure, and this is why I think everyone puts Empire Strikes Back so high on the list. That middle chapter is always the darkest. It's the darkest before the dawn. So you probably will get that in episode 8. And I think to your point, Val, Rogue One is probably the perfect template for that kind of exploration of what it's like to be caught up in the Star Wars. So Bria, can you let folks know where they can find you online and on Twitter and all of the various places that you write and exist?
There's a lot,
in the internet.
So easiest way to find me on Twitter is @ChaosBria. I write for Tashi Station. That's tashi-station.net. I also run whitehotroom.com, and I'm also a staff writer over at Big Shiny Robot. So I just write a lot. I have a lot of feelings about Star Wars mostly. But yeah, Chaos Bria on Twitter. Best way to find me. And
Val, where can folks find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Valerie Complex. It's no hyphen or underscore, just Valerie Complex. And I'm also on Instagram at Valerie_Complex. And that's where people can find me. You can find my profiles on Rotten Tomatoes or Black Girl Nerds or Nerds of Color.
All right. And I'm Keith. You find me on Twitter at The Real Chow with underscores between all the words. Also, the Nerds of Color. Check our podcast out on iTunes and SoundCloud, and our YouTube channel, youtube.com, The Nerds of Color. And yeah, that's Hard Knock Life. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Well, it's the NOC in full color, you see me? The Hard Knock Life, comics, movies, and TV, yeah. Pop culture with a different perspective. Watch it on your screen, hit play, so check this. This is the Hard Knock Life, but not the chica kind. More like the people in the world seeking perspectives with a different line. The kids who share their interests together with a similar kind. When they said John Glover for Spider-Man, they didn't mind. The activists, directors, comments, and the lectures. Fanboys, professional artists, and professors. Maybe a nerd who's just like you, talking about the things that you like too. So I invite you to the NOC.